What many older men don't realize when they step back into dating is that the rules they once mastered haven't just evolved, they've been fundamentally rewritten. There was a time when stability, experience, and a certain quiet authority were enough to create attraction. You built your life, you carried yourself with confidence, and that alone signaled value. But today, that signal is incomplete. Because attraction has shifted, not disappeared, shifted, and it has shifted inward. Modern women are not just observing what you've achieved, they are evaluating how you experience life and how you process emotion. They're asking, often subconsciously, is this a man who understands himself? Is he emotionally available or just structurally impressive? And those are two very different things. You see, emotional intelligence is no longer a bonus, it's the baseline. It's the difference between being respected from a distance and being desired up close. Many older men unknowingly fall into a subtle trap. They lead with logic, solutions, and control because that's what worked in their careers and in earlier stages of life. But in modern relationships, constantly trying to fix, advise, or direct can feel emotionally distant. It creates a dynamic where the woman feels managed rather than understood, and understanding is what creates connection. Emotional intelligence is not about being overly sensitive or abandoning strength. It's about precision. It's about knowing when to speak and when to listen, when to lead and when to simply be present. It's the ability to sit with complexity without needing to simplify it immediately. For example, when a woman expresses frustration, she's not always seeking a solution, she's seeking resonance. She wants to feel that you can enter her emotional world without trying to control it, that you can hold space without turning it into a problem to solve. This is where many men lose attraction without realizing it, not because they lack value, but because they lack emotional attunement. And here's the deeper philosophical shift. Attraction today is less about what you have and more about how you are. Your presence, your awareness, your ability to remain grounded in emotionally charged moments, these are the traits that create safety. And safety, in modern dating, is deeply attractive. It's also important to understand that emotional intelligence requires self-awareness. If you haven't examined your own patterns, your reactions, your triggers, your communication style, you will unintentionally repeat dynamics that no longer work. Growth is no longer optional, it's expected. The advantage, however, is significant. Most men don't make this shift. They rely on outdated frameworks and become frustrated when results don't match their expectations. But the man who adapts, who refines not just his external life, but his internal world, immediately separates himself. Because emotional intelligence is rare and rarity creates value, so if you're stepping back into dating, don't just ask yourself what you bring to the table. Ask yourself how you show up at the table, because in today's world, it's not your achievements that keep someone interested, it's your awareness that keeps them connected. And the truth is simple. A man who understands emotions will always outperform a man who only understands success. Another shift that catches many older men off guard is not about attraction itself, but about power, who holds it, how it's expressed, and what it even means in a modern relationship, because the structure has changed. Dramatically, there was a time when relationships followed a more predictable hierarchy. A man's role was clearly defined. He provided, he led, he decided. And in many cases, that dynamic was accepted, even expected, but today, that framework no longer holds the same authority. Not because men have lost value, but because women have gained autonomy. Modern women are more financially independent, more socially aware, and more emotionally self-directed than ever before. This means they are no longer entering relationships out of necessity. They are entering by choice, and that one shift alone changes the entire equation. Because when someone doesn't need you, your role is no longer to provide stability alone. Your role is to add value to their experience of life. This is where many older men miscalculate. They approach dating with a mindset of offering, I can provide, I can guide, I can lead. But the modern dynamic isn't built on offering alone. It's built on alignment. The question is no longer what can you give, but do we fit? And fit cannot be forced through authority. Trying to dominate the dynamic, assert control, or position yourself as the unquestioned leader often creates resistance rather than attraction. It signals a lack of awareness of the new landscape. What works now is not dominance, it's adaptability. Not control, but mutual respect. This doesn't mean becoming passive or losing your sense of direction. It means understanding that leadership in modern relationships looks different. It's quieter, more grounded. It's expressed through consistency, emotional stability, and clarity of intent, not through control or correction. A woman today is not looking to be managed, she's looking to be met, and being met requires presence. It requires you to see her as an equal participant, not as someone to shape or instruct. When you shift from trying to lead the relationship to co-creating it, something changes. The dynamic becomes collaborative rather than hierarchical, and in that space, genuine attraction can actually grow. There's also a deeper psychological layer here. When power is shared, respect becomes mutual, and mutual respect is far more sustainable than imposed authority. It creates a sense of emotional safety where both people feel valued, not evaluated. The irony is, many men fear that letting go of traditional control will diminish their position. But the opposite is true. The man who understands this shift, who doesn't feel threatened by a woman's independence, but instead complements it, becomes far more compelling. Because he's not competing for control, he's operating from confidence, and confidence, when it's not tied to dominance, becomes incredibly attractive. So the adjustment is subtle but critical. Stop trying to prove your worth through position and start expressing it through presence. Stop asking how to lead and start asking how to connect. Because in today's world, the strongest position a man can hold is not above a woman, but beside her. The third shift is perhaps the most visible, yet the least understood, and that is the speed structure of modern dating itself. It is no longer slow, linear, or predictable. It is fast, digital, and highly selective. And if you don't recognize how deeply this affects human behavior, you will misinterpret what's actually happening. In the past, connection had time to build. You met through social circles, work, or community. There was context, familiarity, and a natural progression. Today, much of that has been replaced by platforms where decisions are made in seconds, not minutes, seconds. And that changes perception. You are no longer being evaluated gradually. You are being assessed instantly. Your presence, your communication, even your energy, everything is filtered through a very narrow window of attention. This is not necessarily fair, but it is real. Many older men struggle here, not because they lack substance, but because they underestimate presentation. They assume their depth will reveal itself over time, but in a fast, moving environment, depth that isn't communicated clearly might never be discovered at all. This is where adaptability becomes essential. It's not about pretending to be someone else. It's about understanding that clarity is power. The way you express yourself, your tone, your language, your awareness must reflect who you are without requiring excessive time to decode. Because attention today is limited and options feel endless, and that perception of endless options creates another psychological shift, selectivity. People are more selective not necessarily because they have better options, but because they believe they do. This belief changes behavior. It lowers patience, shortens emotional investment, and increases the likelihood of quick disengagement at the first sign of friction. If you take this personally, you will become frustrated, but if you understand it, you can navigate it. Because the truth is, most people are not deeply connecting. They are cycling through impressions, and that creates an opportunity for the man who is grounded, intentional, and self-aware. While others are reacting quickly, you can respond with precision. While others are chasing attention, you can create presence. There's also an important internal adjustment here. You cannot approach modern dating with an outdated expectation of immediate loyalty or deep investment. Those things still exist, but they develop differently now. They require consistency, emotional clarity, and time spent filtering through surface-level interactions. In other words, patience is still required, but it must be paired with awareness. You also have to let go of the idea that rejection today always reflects your value. Often, it reflects timing, attention span, or misalignment in a highly saturated environment. When you understand this, you stop internalizing every outcome and start refining your approach instead. Because ultimately, this is not just a faster sister, it's a more revealing one. It exposes who can adapt and who remains rigid. And the man who succeeds is not the one who complains about how things have changed, but the one who studies the change and moves with it. Because in a world where attention is fleeting and choices feel infinite, the rarest thing you can become is someone who is clear, grounded, and unmistakably intentional, and that is exactly the kind of presence people don't scroll past.